Captain Jake Morrison opened his eyes to pain. His head throbbed and his body felt like it had been crushed under a spaceship. The last thing he remembered was his fighter crashing during the battle above the alien world Zarenth. Now he was lying on a cold stone floor inside a strange prison cell. The walls glowed faint blue, humming with energy. Jake tried to stand but fell back down. His wrists were chained. His armor was gone. He was dressed in some kind of royal prisoner robe, white with silver edges. "What the hell?" he muttered. Moments later, the cell door opened with a soft hiss. Two tall alien guards stepped in. They were Zarenthians, blue-skinned, four-eyed warriors with silver armor and sharp cat-like movements. Without saying a word, they pulled Jake to his feet and dragged him down a long corridor. Everything looked polished, ancient, and alien. Walls covered in glowing symbols, statues of strange gods, and banners written in a language he didn't understand. He was led into a large hall, full of whispering nobles, warriors, and alien priests. In the center was a raised platform, and standing on it was a girl. Not just any girl. She was stunning. A young alien woman with glowing white hair, violet eyes, and a dress that shimmered like water. A golden crown rested lightly on her head. Jake blinked. She was staring right at him. Her lips trembled slightly. The guards forced Jake to kneel in front of her. One of the priests stepped forward and began chanting something in the alien language. Jake didn't understand a word, until suddenly a translator device clicked in his ear. The words became clear. "And by the sacred laws of the Zarenth Empire, this warrior shall now take the Princess Lysera as his life-bound mate." Jake's eyes went wide. "What?" The alien princess gasped. She turned to the priest and shouted, "You're taking me as your wife? Really?" The room fell silent. Jake looked around, confused and panicked. "Wait, what's going on? I never agreed to this." Lysera stepped down from the platform, her face pale and angry. She walked up to Jake, grabbed his arm tightly, and leaned close. "Listen," she whispered. "You have no idea what just happened. You defeated one of my royal guards in battle, right?" Jake nodded slowly. "Yeah, he attacked me when I crashed. I was defending myself." "That's the problem," she hissed. "According to our ancient laws, if someone defeats a royal protector in combat, the princess must marry that person. It's a tradition, a stupid old tradition." Jake's mouth opened. "So now I'm your husband?" "Not yet," she said quickly. "This is just the public binding. The full ceremony happens later. But we have a problem. If you refuse, the nobles will think you insulted the Empire. You'll be executed, and I'll be seen as weak, and probably be assassinated." Jake blinked. "So what do we do?" "We fake it," Lysera said. "We act like we're obeying the law. For now. Just smile and nod." The priest looked confused at the delay. "Shall the binding begin, human?" Jake looked into Lysera's nervous eyes. He sighed. "Yeah. Let's get this over with." The priest raised his hands. "Then by blood and vow under stars and flame, let this bond begin." The crowd cheered, music played, confetti burst into the air from the ceiling, nobles clapped, warriors stomped their feet. Jake just stood there, frozen. Married? To an alien? Princess? He was supposed to be in prison, not at a royal wedding. The princess grabbed his hand. "Don't say anything, just wave and smile." He did. He smiled awkwardly and waved. The crowd cheered louder. But deep inside, Jake felt something wasn't right. This wasn't just a mistake, this was something bigger, something darker. He was led out of the hall, past more nobles, and into a golden room, his new royal quarters. It had a bed big enough for 5 people, walls of soft silk and glowing crystal lights. Lysera followed him in, slammed the door shut, and let out a long breath. "We're in big trouble." Jake sat on the bed. "No kidding." Just then there was a knock on the door. A servant whispered, "My lady, the queen wishes to meet the new husband." Lysera's face went pale. She wasn't supposed to return this soon. Jake frowned. "Why? What's wrong with the queen?" Lysera looked at him and said slowly, "She hates humans, and she's killed every man who's ever touched me." Princess Lysera locked the door behind them, her heart pounding. She leaned against the wall, her silver dress still glowing faintly in the dark. Captain Jake Morrison sat on the edge of the massive royal bed, still trying to understand what had just happened. "I was shot down," he muttered. "I should be in a cell, not in a palace, and definitely not married." Lysera looked at him. "We're not married yet, not fully. This was just the bond ceremony. But the whole empire thinks you're my husband now." Jake stared at the glowing walls. "Great. I went from enemy soldier to royal husband in a day." Lysera walked over and whispered, "You're more than that now. You're my shield, whether you want to be or not." Before Jake could respond, there was a chime from the wall. A tiny hologram of a maid appeared. "Your Majesty, the Queen is approaching the chamber. She is not pleased." Lysera's face turned white. She looked at Jake and whispered, "We need to talk, fast." She pulled him into a side chamber, closing the heavy door behind them. The room was smaller, filled with maps, weapons, and royal documents. It looked like a war room, not a princess's private space. "Okay," Jake said. "Start talking." Lysera paced. "In Zarenth tradition, if a warrior defeats a royal guard and touches the princess during a sacred hour, like you did, you are seen as chosen by fate. That makes you my life-bonded mate." Jake shook his head. "I didn't know any of that." "I know," she said. "But now, every noble in this palace thinks you're my fated husband. If you deny the bond, they'll call it blasphemy. You'll be executed, and I'll be forced to choose a new mate, one chosen by the Queen." Jake frowned. "She wants someone else for you?" Lysera's voice turned cold. "She wants someone she can control. A puppet prince. She's been poisoning my father, the real king, for months. He's weak now, barely awake. If she controls me, she rules the empire." Jake crossed his arms. "So what do you want from me?" "I want you to play the role," Lysera said. "Be my husband. Pretend. Just until I find a way to stop her." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Pretend to be married to a beautiful alien princess? Sounds rough." She rolled her eyes. "It's not a game, human. She'll test you. If you slip even once, we both die." Just then, the door to the war room shook. A cold, smooth voice echoed from the hallway. "Daughter, why is the door locked?" Jake and Lysera froze. She leaned in close. "Act calm, smile. Say nothing stupid." She opened the door. Standing there was the Queen of Zarenth. She was tall, graceful, and terrifying. Her skin was a darker blue than the others, almost black. Her eyes glowed red like twin suns. She wore armor disguised as a royal gown, and every step she took sounded like metal scraping on bone. "My daughter," the Queen said, her voice like a knife dipped in honey. "And the human?" Jake stood straight. He nodded politely. "Your Majesty." She walked in, eyes scanning every part of him. "Strange. I expected a savage. But you have manners." Jake said nothing. He could feel her power. This woman wasn't just royalty. She was dangerous. The Queen smiled slowly. "You've made quite a stir, Captain. Some say you are blessed by fate. Others say you are a trick." Jake kept his voice even. "I didn't ask for this, but I'll honor your laws." "Good," she said. "Then you won't mind a little test." Jake tensed. "What kind of test?" The Queen clapped her hands. A guard entered carrying a glowing blade. It was curved like a claw and shimmered with green fire. "You will enter the moon pit tomorrow," she said. "A royal husband must prove himself before the people. You will fight one of my champions. If you win, you keep your life. And my daughter." Jake felt a chill down his spine. "And if I lose?" The Queen smiled wider. "Then your body will feed the royal beasts." Lysera stepped forward. "Mother, that tradition was banned decades ago." Then it's time we brought it back, the Queen said sharply. She turned to Jake. Rest well, human. Tomorrow you bleed. With that, she left. Jake let out a long breath. That went, well. Lysera looked at him with panic in her eyes. You don't understand. The moon pit isn't just a fight. It's a trap. No one survives it. She wants you dead before the people start to like you. Jake looked toward the stars outside, the palace window. Then I'll just have to do something no one's done before. Captain Jake Morrison woke up to the sound of metal scraping against stone. His eyes shot open. The royal bedchamber was dark, lit only by the soft glow of floating lights on the walls. At first, he thought it was just a servant, until he saw the figure crouching by the window. Someone was inside the room and they were holding a knife. Jake didn't move. His instincts kicked in. Slowly, silently, he slid one leg off the bed, reaching for the small dagger Lysera had given him before. Just in case. The figure crept closer, wearing a tight black suit that shimmered like liquid shadow. 4 glowing eyes peeked out from behind a thin mask. The knife gleamed blue under the soft light. Jake waited. Closer. Closer. Now. With a sudden movement, Jake kicked the attacker's legs and rolled off the bed. The assassin stumbled forward, slashing wildly. Jake caught his wrist and twisted hard. The knife dropped. They struggled in silence, both trying to keep quiet. Jake grabbed the fallen dagger and drove it into the assassin's side. A quiet gasp escaped the killer's lips before they collapsed. The door burst open. Princess Lysera stood there wearing a thin silver robe, eyes wide with shock. What happened? Jake pointed to the body. Someone wanted your new husband dead. Guards arrived seconds later. They checked the body and one of them froze. This is one of our own. A palace guard. Lysera's face turned pale. She's speeding things up. Jake stood. The Queen? Lysera nodded. She wants you dead before the moon pit. She thinks if you die quietly in your bed, she can call it a rebel attack. No public trial. No blame. Jake frowned. She's not afraid of killing people. Even her own. No, Lysera whispered. Because she doesn't see people. She sees tools and threats. Jake looked at the blood on his hands and the body on the floor. Then were both threats. Lysera motioned for the guards to take the body away and seal the room. When the two were alone again, she turned to Jake. Listen to me. The moon pit is tomorrow. If you go in as you are, you'll die. But if you let me train you, just for one night, maybe, you'll survive. Jake raised an eyebrow. You're going to train me? You think I can take on an alien champion after one night of sword lessons? She smirked. Not sword, movement, weak points, mind games. Alien fighters are strong, yes, but they follow honor codes. You're human. You don't have to. Jake smiled. I like the sound of that. For the next few hours, the royal chamber turned into a secret training ground. Lysera taught him alien footwork, how her people fought with grace, speed, and balance. She showed him how to spot pressure points on alien anatomy and how to turn an opponent's size against them. Jake learned fast. His body was tired, but his mind stayed sharp. Why are you helping me this much? He asked during a short break. Lysera looked at him seriously. Because if you die tomorrow, I'm next. If the people see a weak princess who couldn't keep her husband alive, they'll lose faith. And the Queen will finally take the throne. I need you alive. For both of us. Jake nodded. All right. Then I'll give them a fight they'll never forget. As the twin moons rose above the Zarenth sky, Jake stood on the palace balcony, looking down at the glowing city. Fires burned in lanterns, nobles drank and laughed in towers, and far below, the moon pit waited. It was a wide circular arena carved into the mountain itself, with walls of bone and fire. Already crowds were gathering. They were hungry for blood, and they expected a human to die. Behind him, Lysera walked up and stood quietly beside him. You don't have to win. she said. Just survive. Jake looked at her. No, he said. I do have to win. He turned and walked back into the room to get ready. But Lysera remained there, staring at the moon pit, her heart heavy. She had seen many champions enter that arena. Not one had walked out. Still, something about Jake was different. He didn't fight like her people. He didn't think like her people. Maybe, just maybe, he had a chance. The arena roared like a beast. Stone walls shook with every cheer. Thousands of aliens stood in the moon pit stands, nobles, warriors, priests, and spies. Above them, on a floating throne, sat the queen, calm and cruel, her red eyes watching the arena below like a spider waiting for her prey. In the middle of the arena stood Captain Jake Morrison, alone, unarmored, human. He wore a simple fighter's vest, loose pants, and light boots given by Lysera. No sword, no shield, just his fists and his mind. Across from him stood his opponent, a Zarinthian brute named Varric, 10 feet tall, covered in black metal armor, carrying a double-bladed axe longer than Jake's body. Varric slammed the axe on the ground. The crowd cheered louder. The priest stepped forward between them and raised his hand. Before the duel begins, the human will kneel to show respect to the queen. All eyes turned to Jake. He didn't move. The priest cleared his throat. Kneel, human. It is law. Still Jake did nothing. The queen's voice echoed across the arena. Calm. Sharp. Is the human deaf or simply foolish? Jake raised his head and finally spoke. His voice was clear, loud and full of steel. I kneel to no tyrant. Gasps filled the arena. The queen's face froze. The crowd fell into a stunned silence. Even Varric lowered his axe for a second. Jake took a slow step forward. I respect the law, he said. I respect the people, but I won't kneel to someone who tried to poison me in my sleep. The queen's smile vanished. Jake pointed at the royal seats. You sent an assassin last night. She failed. The queen stood, her cloak whipping in the wind. You are no warrior, human. You are a worm crawling in the dirt. Let us see how long your pride lasts once your bones break. She waved her hand. Begin. The gong sounded. Varric charged. His axe came down like a meteor. The ground cracked where Jake had just been standing, but Jake had already moved. He ducked, rolled, and sprang up behind the giant. He wasn't stronger, he wasn't faster, but he was lighter, smarter, and full of surprises. Lysera watched from the shadows of the royal box, her heart pounding. Come on, Jake, don't fight like them. Fight like you. Varric swung again. Jake slipped under his arms, struck the back of his knee, and rolled away before the counter-strike. The giant stumbled. He turned, growling, but Jake was gone again. The crowd started to murmur. He's not fighting. He's dodging. He's dancing. From above, the queen's anger grew. Stop playing with him, Varric. Crush him. But Varric was already breathing harder. Sweat poured down his blue face. Jake suddenly leapt onto a wall spike, pushed off, and kicked the side of Varric's head. The crowd gasped. The champion staggered. Jake landed, panting. You're big, he muttered, but you're slow. Varric roared and swung wildly. Jake slid under the blade, grabbed a handful of dirt, and threw it into the alien's eyes. Varric screamed. Jake darted behind him and kicked his leg again. This time, the brute collapsed to one knee. Jake didn't waste the moment. He grabbed the axe. The crowd stood. Even the queen leaned forward. Jake spun the weapon, using both hands, and slammed the back of it into Varric's head. The champion hit the ground and didn't move. Silence. Total, complete silence. Then, the arena exploded with noise. Half the crowd screamed in joy, the other half screamed in rage, but they all screamed. Jake stood there, chest heaving, arms shaking, but alive. Above him, the queen's lips curled into a hateful snarl. In the shadows, Lysera smiled. Jake looked up at the crowd. His voice rang across the arena. I may not be your kind, but I bled for this moment. I stood alone, and I didn't kneel. He threw the axe aside and walked toward the gate without bowing, without waiting, because he was human, and humans don't kneel. The arena had gone quiet. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the center, blood on his fists and dust in his hair. He had defeated Varric, the Queen's champion, in front of thousands. He should have been surrounded by cheers, praise, celebration. But instead, the people were whispering. They weren't chanting his name, they were murmuring something else, one word. Again and again. The Chosen. Jake heard it but didn't understand it. He walked out of the moon pit under heavy guard, confused by the sudden shift in energy. No one looked at him like a prisoner anymore. No one looked at him like a joke. They looked at him like a legend. Back inside the palace, Princess Lysera was pacing her private chamber. Her golden dress dragged on the floor, forgotten. She had watched the fight, every second of it. Jake had done what no other warrior, Zarinthian or otherwise, had ever done. He beat the Queen's champion without alien weapons. He didn't kneel. And somehow, the prophecy had begun to stir. The door slammed open. Jake walked in, still catching his breath. Why were they calling me the Chosen out there? Lysera froze. Jake walked closer. I heard it. The crowd, your guards, even some of the priests. What does it mean? She didn't answer at first. She turned to a locked case on the wall and opened it. Inside was a scroll, sealed with blood-colored wax and marked with a symbol Jake had never seen. Long ago, she began, before the Queen, before the Empire rose, there was a legend. Jake folded his arms. Let me guess, someone who would defeat evil and bring peace? Lysera looked at him. Close, but not just someone. A human. Jake blinked. Wait. What? She unrolled the scroll. The ancient drawings were crude, but one showed a figure with 2 eyes, short hair, and strange clothes standing before an alien army. Behind him was a woman with silver hair, just like hers. Jake stared. That looks like me. Lysera nodded. The prophecy says, in our darkest hour, when the Empire is dying from within, a creature not of our stars will rise. He will not kneel. He will fight without armor. And beside the Silver Daughter, he will break the chains. Jake took a step back. This is insane. Lysera gave him a hard look. You didn't kneel. You defeated the strongest warrior, alive. And you bonded with the royal bloodline even if it was an accident. Jake tried to laugh. So now I'm supposed to save your whole world? She didn't laugh back. Silence. Then she said softly, the Queen thinks it's just a story, but the people, they've waited for you for centuries. Jake sat down, overwhelmed. This is too much. I'm just a soldier. I crash-landed on your planet. I'm not some space messiah. Lysera came closer. Maybe not. Maybe it's just a coincidence. But you have to decide something, Jake. Right now. He looked up. You can walk away. Run. Let the Queen take control. Let the Empire fall. Or you can stand up, not as a king, not as a hero, but as a man who's already done the impossible. Jake stared at the scroll, the warrior, the silver-haired girl, the fire rising behind them. He clenched his fists. I didn't come here to be a savior, he said slowly. But I sure as hell won't let that monster rule over you. Lysera smiled, for the first time in days. Then we fight. But high above the palace in the Queen's dark tower, shadows were already moving. A tall, thin alien in a black cloak stepped out of the mist. My Queen, he said. The people believe the human may be the one. The Queen didn't flinch. Then we must destroy not just the man, but the myth. She opened a secret vault. Inside was something ancient, something alive, something she had saved for only one enemy. The prophecy ends tomorrow, she whispered, when I unleash the void beast. The food smelled like heaven. The danger smelled like death. Captain Jake Morrison stood in a golden banquet hall surrounded by the most powerful aliens in the Empire. The ceiling was a sky dome, clear glass showing 2 moons above glowing softly. Below, tables stretched with shining plates, glowing fruits, sizzling meat, and drinks that sparkled like stars. It looked like a celebration. It felt like a trap. Beside him stood Princess Lysera, dressed in silver silk, her posture perfect. But Jake could see the tension in her eyes. Her hand lightly touched the hilt of the blade hidden in her dress. At the far end of the hall sat the queen. She wore black robes with gold edges. Her red eyes glowed brighter than the moon's. Her smile was sweet, but her fingers tapped the table. Slowly, patiently, like a hunter waiting for its prey to walk into the kill zone. Jake whispered, "You sure this is a dinner? Not an execution?" Lysera replied without turning her head. "Both, probably." The queen stood and raised her glass. "Tonight," she said, her voice rich and calm, "we celebrate victory. Our enemies fall. Our future is bright, and our royal daughter has found her fate." Her eyes flicked toward Jake, in the arms of an outsider. The nobles raised their glasses. Though many did so hesitantly, Jake smiled politely. His gut twisted. As the music played and dancers twirled across the floor, a servant approached with 2 goblets of red sparkling wine. Jake's eyes narrowed. The servant bowed and offered them to Jake and Lysera. Jake took one. So did Lysera. She leaned in, speaking through her smile. "This is it. She'll try it now." Jake nodded. He turned casually to a nearby pillar, raised the glass. Then, as everyone watched, he smiled and switched the cups. No one seemed to notice, but Lysera did. She hid her surprise perfectly. Jake lifted the queen's cup and took a slow sip. All eyes were on him. He smiled, then handed the untouched second cup to the servant. "Deliver this back to the queen with my thanks," he said calmly. The hall fell quiet. The servant hesitated. She insisted it was for you, sir." Jake's smile grew colder. "Then she won't mind having it herself." The queen's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. The servant took the cup back across the hall, placed it on her table. The queen stared at it for a long moment, then lifted it, took a sip, and smiled. But Jake watched closely. He saw her pupils tighten, her fingers twitch. She stood too fast, then sat back down. Jake leaned toward Lysera. "She drank it." Lysera's voice was barely a breath. "That wine was poisoned, a slow one." Jake's jaw tightened. "You knew she planned it for you," Lysera said. "I switched it before we even came in." They sat in silence for a few seconds. Then Lysera said, "She'll blame someone else for the poison, but she'll feel it soon." And just like that, the queen stood. She raised a hand to speak, but her lips trembled. She staggered backward. A hand clutched her throat. The crowd gasped. The music stopped. Jake stood up slowly, watching. The queen coughed once, then smiled. "You think this will stop me?" she whispered. Her voice echoed with something unnatural. Suddenly the doors of the banquet hall flew open. Dark wind blew in, candles went out, and from the shadows behind the throne something moved. Something big. Something wrong. Lysera's face turned white. She released it. Jake looked up. A massive figure stepped into the hall, covered in armor made of bone, its face hidden by a mask of shadows. Its eyes glowed with green fire. The air around it twisted and moaned. "The void beast," Lysera whispered. "What's that?" Jake asked. "It's not a person," she said. "It's a curse, a living weapon. The queen kept it locked away for decades. No one survived seeing it." Jake stepped in front of her. "Then I'll be the first." The queen, half falling, laughed from her chair. "You will die now, human, and your bones will feed my throne." The void beast roared, its voice shattered glass. Guards drew weapons, nobles screamed. Jake stepped forward. No sword, No armor, just fists, and fire in his eyes. The void beast didn't walk. It floated. Its feet never touched the ground. The air around it bent, and the floor cracked wherever it passed. Long, smoky arms dragged behind it like chains, and its bone armor clicked as if it were alive. Every noble in the banquet hall was frozen in fear. Everyone. Except the human. Captain Jake Morrison stood between the monster and Lysera, his hands clenched, his heart steady. He had fought soldiers, he had fought champions, but now, he was facing something, not meant to exist, Lysera whispered behind him. Jake, don't fight it. We run. No, Jake said, voice firm. If we run, it'll follow. If we die, the queen wins. The void beast raised a claw. Jake moved, faster than expected. He rolled under the attack and grabbed a broken spear from a fallen guard. It was light and sharp, human enough to work. He charged. The void beast screamed. A sound like 10,000 souls crying at once. Jake thrust the spear into its shoulder. It went through, but the beast didn't bleed. Instead, it absorbed the metal. Tasty. Spear melted like paper. Jake jumped back, eyes wide. Oh, come on. The queen laughed weakly from her throne. You cannot kill what is not alive. Jake looked around. The nobles were too scared to move. The guards had backed away. Even Lysera was shaking. So he did what only a human would do in that moment. He climbed the wall. The beast followed, smashing through tables and pillars as it chased him. Jake kicked down a hanging banner, wrapped it around the beast's arm, and yanked. The creature stumbled, gave him an opening. Jake landed a hard punch right to the jaw of its skull mask. It didn't hurt the creature, but it made it angry. Jake grinned. Good, now I have your attention. The beast roared again and fired a blast of black energy from its hand. Jake ducked. The beam missed and struck the queen's throne instead. The golden throne exploded. The queen screamed, thrown across the room. Her robes burned. Her crown rolled across the floor. Jake saw his chance. He sprinted straight at the beast, zigzagging like a wild animal. He slid between its legs, grabbed one of the fallen alien spears, and this time, stabbed upward into the exposed joint behind its leg armor. A weak spot. The beast howled. Its leg buckled. Jake climbed onto its back, hanging onto the shifting bones and shadows. The creature slammed itself against the wall, trying to crush him. Jake reached around its neck, pulled free a glowing green shard, its power core. The beast froze, screamed, shook violently, then shattered. In a burst of smoke and fire, it collapsed into ash. Silence. The hall was still. Jake dropped to the floor, breathing hard. Then he turned and saw the queen crawling toward her crown, face twisted in hate. He walked over and placed a boot on the crown before she could reach it. It's over, he said. You're just a man. She spat. Jake looked around. Nobles stood. Soldiers bowed. And Lysera walked to his side, proud and steady. He said, maybe, but I'm the man your people chose. The queen screamed and fainted. A week later, the empire had changed. The queen was imprisoned, awaiting trial. The king, Lysera's father, recovered slowly with help from human medicine. The people began to speak freely again. Smiles returned to the streets of Zarenth. And Jake. Jake stood in royal robes. Beside him was Lysera, her hand in his. The coronation. Bell rang across the sky. Priests spoke, crowds cheered, and Lysera turned to him and whispered, So, you're taking me as your husband now? Jake grinned. Wife. Definitely wife. But yeah, I guess I am. They kissed as the stars above shined down. Final scene, far beyond the Zarenth Empire, in the cold reaches of space, another council watched the news. A human now ruled a royal alien bloodline. One voice growled in the darkness, The humans rise too fast. We must prepare. But another voice whispered, Or, we fall.